A lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women complain about the blahs. They just don't feel good. They put on weight and not sleeping well. But wouldn't you rather feel like you're blooming? That's what we're talking about today on Wellness by Design. I'm your host, Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer. And my guest today is a dear friend of mine, Jana Danielson. And Jana has spent 30 years helping women improve their health. And she's really tied together the intersection of metabolism, mindset, and movement. And these three pillars she describes as a braid that need to be woven together to help you bloom. All right, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And Jana's got a special gift for you as well. So I'll see you inside. Don't forget to share this with your friends, rate, review, subscribe. And maybe if you're listening to this on a podcast, you'll want to go to YouTube, or maybe if you're on YouTube, you'd like to go and listen on your favorite podcast platform. All right, I'll see you inside. Jana Danielson, my dear sweet friend, welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm so happy to have you here. You've been on the podcast before, but it's like you're a returning champion. So welcome back.
Jane, thank you for having here. It always feels like, coming home. I feel like even though sometimes there's time between our reconnecting, when we do, it's like no time has passed. So I
Hmm.
love to, keep tabs of what you've been up to, and I just appreciate you allowing me to be back on your podcast.
Well, I love everything that you do, and when I hear about the things that you're doing, like, okay, I just want to share Jana with my community. And
Hmm.
yeah, I you've just got such a beautiful light about you, so I'm happy to have you here. So you have been on the podcast before, but maybe some
Hmm.
people are listening for the first time. So just can you give a little quick background about what took you from where you were before to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. So my wellness by design story started very chaotic. And in fact, at 21 years old, I would go to bed at night, and the last thing I would see was the 11 bottles of medication on my nightstand. And I would open my eyes, and the first thing in the morning is I would see those 11 bottles of medications on my nightstand. And what I didn't know then, but what I know now, which we're going to touch on around mindset, is I don't know how I expected my body to be able to heal, to be able to go from survive to thrive, when literally the last thing I saw at night and the first thing I saw in the morning were those 11 bottles of prescriptions. Like, what do you think is going to happen? And so my pain journey was digestive in nature, or it started digestive in nature. And anyone that's been in any form of pain knows that the body is it's so interesting in how it manages pain. So my gut pain over the course of 2 years literally became every inch of my body pain. At 21 years old, I was having pelvic floor issues, like incontinence issues. And that's what really, I was like, what? Isn't peeing your pants when you cough or sneeze, isn't that something either new moms deal with or someone in menopause? Like it really threw me for a loop. And I went from this, seemingly very healthy farm girl that was like, a leader in her school, in her community, loved to do all the things, to someone who became very withdrawn, someone who actually hated like I hated my body. And I don't love using that word at all, but I did. It would disgust me to look at myself in the mirror, and not because of what I necessarily saw, because from the outside I looked healthy, but I was just so disgusted with why why was I living in a body that was so unhealthy? It didn't make sense. I was eating the right things, I was moving my body, I had people that loved me, and I just decided that for some reason I pulled the short straw, and God must have granted me this for something I maybe did in a previous life. And the day my doctor said to me, Jana, this was 2 years into my medical journey, we believe the pain is in your head and you're seeking attention. That was my dark night of the soul. And back then, that was almost 30 years ago. The term medical gaslighting wasn't actually a term. And actually started to believe her a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is in my head. Like maybe I am, right? Like you start believing that, and the voices in your head that don't shut up just keep building and building and building that distress in your body. And 6 months after that, I went to my first Pilates mat class, and 4 months after that day, I was off all 11 medications and
Mm.
had a new lease on life. And not only that, but this brand new curiosity about what just happened in my body over 16 weeks that years of white coats and stethoscopes just completely missed. And what I realized was that I, through that movement experience, was healing my body as a system
Mm.
instead of what our healthcare system has become, when you look at something very segmented, um, it's hard to miss everything else that's around it. So I can't really blame my medical team because they were just doing their job. Each doctor that had a specialty in that 2 or 3 inch piece of my body, they didn't look beyond that 2 or 3 inches, right?
Right.
So they were dumbfounded. The only thing that they could do was give me more medicine so that I could live somewhat of a quality of life.
Mm.
But when I took that all away and allowed my body to heal as an entity, that's when the magic happened.
Mm. And it's not really their fault either.
Mm-mm,
That's the
mm-mm.
training that's all they know. And I'm sure they feel frustrated because the only tool in the toolbox is let's try another one. Let's try another medication.
Yeah,
And I hope things are changing. It's probably going to be slow because nothing happens really quickly when, in a big institution. But how beautiful that you found a pathway through Pilates. So it's no wonder you became passionate about Pilates.
yeah.
Through Pilates, because it's not just physical movement, right? There's other stuff going on as well. But it empowered you, right? And that took
Mm.
you on a path instead of feeling like, why is my body letting me down? And looking at these 11 bottles of medication last thing before you go to sleep and then first thing you wake up, like that reminder of I'm broken or this body
Mm-hmm.
seems to be broken. Took you to empowerment. And so that started you on this journey. I know that you
Yeah.
had a Pilates studio for a long time,
Mhm.
and then the Cooch ball. Maybe just give
Yeah.
people a little introduction to the Cooch
Sure.
ball as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I got certified to teach Pilates because I wanted to know more. And so my career shifted from the corporate world to wellness entrepreneurship. And soon my hobby of teaching Pilates became a studio. And then we expanded and included an integrated health therapies clinic. I grew that to a team of 60. And in that process of working with these beautiful clinicians like chiropractors and osteopaths and naturopathic doctors, pelvic floor physical therapists, nutritionists, mental health practitioners, I started to zero in on pelvic floor health and realized through some really keystone research that 90% of pelvic floor dysfunction is not actually a medical issue. It's not something that your body has to get fixed from or heal from. It's something that it's movement related. It's a cause of, poor breathing, which so many of us don't know how to breathe properly, poor posture, and a lack of blood flow. So as soon as I learned that research that 90% of pelvic floor dysfunction can be fixed with improved breathing, improved posture, and healthy blood flow to those 14 beautiful muscles. That really shifted my perspective on what I could do to impact. And so I did, I was already teaching in my Pilates classes how to breathe properly. My team was focusing on posture, but it was this blood flow piece that was kind of like an enigma. I was like, how do I, without sending someone to my pelvic floor therapist that can do an internal exam and create this blood flow through getting rid of just congestion or trigger points in the pelvic floor. How could I in a class give someone a tool that they could do on their own every single day? And that's when the Cooch ball was born. And it's a 5 inch basic pelvic floor fitness tool, and mine is over
Uh,
there.
mine's
Um,
up where I use it every day and
yes,
on my yoga
exactly.
mat and yeah.
So the concept is simple. I mean, in today's world where we have so many different like health tech, all these, all the wearables and all this information about, how much REM sleep did we get, or what's my fasting glucose? We can do that all at home. This is simply a ball that was designed for the weight of the body. So when you sit on it, you can't see the patented inside layer. But when you sit on it and when you breathe diaphragmatically, what happens is if the pelvic floor is dysfunctional because it's too tight, the weight of the body on the ball through the relaxation of the diaphragmatic breathing starts the melting process through those fascial restrictions that eliminate healthy blood flow to the muscle. Any muscle that doesn't have blood flow is like a plant without water and sunlight. It's just not going to be functional, right? On the other hand, if you have a pelvic floor that is lacking tone or hypotonic, that when you're sitting on the Cooch ball, the ball almost becomes like a stage or a floor to lift up and away from. So it gives the biofeedback to the brain. So many women, especially, and men have pelvic floors as well, but we've heard of like the Kegel, the Kegel, the Kegel, and we know that in most cases the Kegel actually exacerbates the dysfunction because it already takes a muscle that's too tight. And what happens when we stop the flow of urine and start the flow of urine in our Kegeling is we actually make those muscles more tight, which then creates more, chronically tight hips, more back pain, cold, tingly feet, constipation, all of these symptoms or outcomes in our life that we would never necessarily connect the dots to the pelvic floor. And so that's what intrigued me. And then, the evolution of self just kept going. I sold my clinic, I sold my studio, really was focusing on the Cooch ball. And then what I heard women in my community saying to me was, Jana, how do we, we're getting into these menopausal years. Why all of a sudden is there extra, I'm carrying extra weight around my middle. I haven't changed anything. Why am I dragging my butt some days and some days I'm like I have energy, to burn? Why am I feeling like we fast forwarded this aging process. My joints don't move like they do. I feel like I am, one woman said, like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz after a heavy rain. And these pain points kept coming up over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, what is it? How can I serve these women in a new way, in addition to pelvic floor health, changing that conversation? And that's when this idea of how does our mindset, how does our movement, and how does our metabolic health as three separate pillars? I realized I've been doing this for almost 30 years in women's health. But then when I started bringing them together, like, a braid in a woman's hair, that's when I started noticing something really special happening, is that connecting the dots between these three pillars and understanding how they all impact each other really started to change my community's not only perspective on their wellness, but their motivation. I asked my community about 6 months ago, what's the one biggest block in your life from living your very best? Right. And the number one answer came back like consistency. How do I stay consistent day in and day out with this lifestyle? And you know what, Jane? I think the missing piece is, and you probably see this in your own community, is when the beating hearts that we serve don't really have clarity on when I pick up this water bottle and take a sip of water, what's actually happening in my body, and how does this simple action of drinking water tap into my mindset, into my movement, into my metabolism? And once I started going to that level of connecting the dots for people, it is so much easier for them to stay consistent because they know what the outcome is going to be on the other end. So that's how this whole concept of bringing, how Pilates became the Cooch ball. My studio sold that, became now my new brand called Bloom Better, really focusing on those three pillars of mindset, movement, and metabolic health, and bringing them all together. it's our world is in a, and you know this, right? Like from a metabolic health perspective, the latest research from 2022 is showing that there's only 6.8% of us in North America that are metabolically healthy. That's it.
It's astounding. It's
That's
astounding.
it, isn't it? And so, as thought leaders and as, cheerleaders for the people in our community, how can we help them to understand, like, here's the problem, but there are these beautiful solutions out there that don't have to be dramatic or time consuming or costly. Like it just is a reframe around the
Mhm.
simplicity of connecting those dots.
And it is so simple, right? We hear over and over again that most chronic health conditions, like nearly all of them, and that includes chronic pain, it includes autoimmune, it includes, diabetes, like everything, and even a lot of cancers are directly related to our lifestyle. Even Alzheimer's, they're saying it's a lot lifestyle disease. So, and at the root of that, it is metabolic issues, right? And so, but what people don't realize is that, that mind, how the mindset part is such a huge piece in those three pillars, and that in order to get the body functioning metabolically healthy, we need those pillars. But it's really lifestyle, and so it's
Hmm.
not hard, and it's not expensive, like you said. It's a different way of being, and we've gotten into a way of being that hasn't really served us as a general population, and the statistics are showing it. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of learning the new way of being, and you put it together so beautifully, uh, with those three pillars. And I love that brand, the Bloom Better brand. It's just
Thank you.
it's so refreshing, right? It feels like a fresh start and springtime, right? Because we're blooming. Um, so how do those three parts work together?
Mhm. Yeah. So I love learning. Like I love to learn.
I
And
get
as
it.
I started to, right, yeah, right. Like I just don't ever want to stop. And I think one of the big aha moments for me for putting these three together was when I was reading the book Power versus Force by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And he created what he calls the scale of consciousness. And so this scale of consciousness actually goes from, if you just numerically, it goes from 0 to 1,000. There are no units to it. Like it's not like, you know, hertz or centimeters or anything like that. It's just a number. And what
Yeah.
he did was he used a form of kinesthetic research called muscle testing. And
Mm-hmm.
he muscle tested like 250,000 people. And what he found was he was able, through muscle testing, he was able to actually map the frequencies of emotions on the scale of consciousness. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And so what he found was that shame is actually the lowest frequency emotion at a 20, courage was a 200, love came out at 500, and enlightenment was anything 700 plus. Okay. So this got me thinking. The pudendal nerve, I'm going to take you back to my Pilates or to my pelvic floor roots. So the pudendal nerve is the main nerve that runs from the brain to the pelvic floor in through the genitalia of a man's body and a woman's body. If you were to Google what is the Latin root of the word pudendal, what would come up on that Google search is an area of shame. So the main nerve that brings, so that nerve is a motor nerve and a sensory nerve. So what it means is it brings messages to and from the brain to the pelvic floor, like baby's coming, we have to relax, right? Or um, intercourse, this should be pleasurable. Or I have to pee, let me relax so I can pee and completely empty my bladder. It's also sensory, right? So anything from pleasure to pain. When I put these two pieces together, I was like, is there any wonder that women would rather be muted about pelvic floor stuff? They don't want to tell their doctor, their best friend, their mom, their sister. we secretly walk down the aisles of the grocery store to get our incontinence products, which is almost a $20 billion industry. So we know that women are doing this. And I started to wonder, what if we brought awareness to this? And what if we could shift someone's awareness around shame? At 200, at courage, that is where, from an emotional intelligence perspective, we flip from restrictive emotions to
Hmm.
expansive emotions, right? And it's not that restrictive emotions are bad and expansive emotions are good. It just means that the restrictive emotions, if not acknowledged, right? Those are our restrictive emotions are our boot camp instructor. They are there to teach us a lesson, but they can be brutal. And we can often sit in them and sit in them. And the hamster, she spins and she spins and she tells us we're not good enough. Our light starts to dim. Our sympathetic nervous system goes crazy. Our cortisol goes through the roof. We have no oxytocin in our body. And so this is when I started to put things together because metabolic health simply means how good is your body at taking energy from food and converting it into energy for our cells because our cells need energy. Well, if we are seeing our life through a set of lenses that is shameful and sad and lonely, I mean, we're all energetic beings, right? That is the frequency we are going to give off.
Hmm.
And unless we become aware of that, that won't shift. And so the set of lenses that include a mindset that gets us above that 200. Did you know that when you walk into a room and if you are above 200, um, you are now impacting the people around you that have no idea. You're like this battery that is bringing light into the room. And have you ever had anyone, Jane, like walk up to you or just say to you, like, you just have such a really cool energy about you. Or you give someone a smile and it just changes their entire demeanor.
Hmm.
That's what's happening, gang. That is what's happening. It is like, you want to talk about viral, there are really good things that we can be viral in our frequency and our energy and impact it that way versus what we've come to know as viral, and I need to have my space and I need to not make eye contact, right? This world we're living in. And so that's really the first piece of mindset. Eckhart Tolle said it beautiful, is that awareness is the first piece is the agent for change. Without that awareness,
Gotta have it.
change cannot happen, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really how those pieces come to connect together, is that through that awareness piece and that frequency that we are giving off.
Hmm. And I think about it sometimes with frequency, like I love what you said there, Jan, about, we are emitting a frequency all the time. And so what is it? But also our cells are bathed in that frequency. And so how can we expect ourselves to keep turning over on as they do and reproducing in a healthy way if they are bathed in a message of shame or in those other negative emotions? And
Totally.
not, I mean, of course we're going to have different emotions at different times, but it's like
Yes.
what's the
Yes.
marinade we're giving them most of the time, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
Well,
I love that.
and I think that you bring an important point, is that we can get into this cycle, right? And from a movement perspective, like when we're not feeling up to our best, or when I did on my summit a few years ago, the Medicine and Mindset Summit, I spoke with Dr. Amy Apigian, and she really clearly explained the difference between the stress response and the trauma response. In the stress response, we're like Atlas holding the world above our head. We're going to figure this out. We are solution oriented. Yes, our sympathetic nervous system is kind of fueling us, but we are hell bent on finding a solution. When that stress response is too long, the
Yeah.
the needle switches from stress response to trauma. Now all of a sudden the world is way too heavy. We retreat,
Yes.
we give up. the vagus nerve is not, functioning properly. And that's what I think a lot of people need to understand is that this, this happens unbeknownst to us. So when we are living without, she talks about trauma as being too much too soon or too little for
Too
too
little, too
long,
long.
right? And when we're on the couch, laying on the couch, or, going within, not getting sunlight, when we don't move, movement is actually the catalyst. It's like when we plug in our phone at night to make sure that our phone is fully charged in the morning so that we can have it throughout the day. Movement does that for the mitochondria in our cells. So
Hmm.
when we are not moving because we feel exhausted, because we could a walk around the block is the last thing I want to do right now because I have all of these emotions dealing with all of these situations in my family, in my workplace. It becomes, again, one of those hamster wheel cycles that we don't move. So we're exhausted. We're exhausted, so we don't move. But until we move, until we, breathe, until we like open our heart, those mitochondria will not do their job. And so we will be in this perpetual kind of downhill slide. And that's when our immune system starts to not serve us as well. That's where you get into that, Jana Danielson and her 21-year-old version, where you actually start disconnecting from self. You start falling out of love with your body. You start maybe doing what I was doing, hating this body that I was in. And we don't get a do-over. We don't. So what has to happen? What is your dark night of the soul? I know what mine was, which really kind of shifted the pendulum for me. And you know, this this world is going to throw curveballs at us incessantly.
We
And
know
I
that.
feel like we know that, right? And I feel that when you can show up for yourself and get some sunlight and get your feet on the ground and do your diaphragmatic breathing and move your body a little bit, when those curveballs come, you are more ready to be the resilient, spiritual being in a human body to, serve yourself or those people who are reaching out for, for a helping hand. And so that's really, and that's maybe a deeper level of this braid that we're bringing together with mindset, movement, and metabolism. But that's also the beautiful chaos and the simplicity of it as well.
I really love that. And that I think when you brought up we know with our cell phones, right? When that battery, symbol is dropping and we know we got to plug it in. And I was thinking as you were saying that, too bad we don't have that, but we do have that. By how you feel whether or not you need to plug in, right? Plug into getting the exercise, plug into drinking the water, prioritizing your health. We've got that measure. Of course, you can get
Hmm.
wearable devices, but you don't need them. By looking at your life, and so it's a beautiful, actually, a gift, right? To tell you, I need some help here. Your body's
Yeah.
saying, I need
Yeah.
some. So, Jana, you've just released a book. So, let's talk about the Sacred Woman's Guide to Blooming Better. I love the title.
Hmm.
Tell us a little
Thank
bit
you.
about the book.
Yeah. So, this is like the book of my soul. I feel like the words of this book have been in the making for almost 30 years. And so, what it is basically is a kickoff to a celebration of who we are as women. And I created what I called my seven sacred women. And these seven sacred women, I believe, are inside all of us. The DIY woman, how many times in our life have we been that woman, like, wearing the Wonder Woman badge on our chest, like, no, I don't need no help. I have it. I have it. What about the self-neglected woman, where we are giving and giving and giving to everyone else? And then maybe if there's a little bit left at the end of the day, we give to ourselves. Or the stuck woman, like, I don't actually know what my one next step is. The wandering woman, where you're meandering, maybe it's through, a personal relationship or a professional relationship. And so I started reflecting on this in my own life. And these seven sacred women, I started to see them actually as a daisy with the sacred woman, the center of the daisy, and these seven petals. And this idea of the sacred woman is not a destination point. It's not like, I turned 50 in December last year. And it's not like, okay, I'm 50. I now have this all figured out. I am here in my sacredness. That's not actually what it is, right? The sacredness is the meandering from petal to petal and like flipping into that DIY woman or reconnecting with that self-neglected woman. However, the difference is you can see it and feel it much quicker than you used to be able to because of all these beautiful experiences and learnings in your life. So once I established the seven sacred women, the book basically then is three sections going through how do you master mindset? Now that you know the sacredness of every single divine feminine, how do you master your mindset? What is mindset? How can you? And I share stories of my own or from people that I've worked with. And then there's a whole section on mastering movement. We talk about, the basics. Movement is medicine because it is. We talk about the pelvic floor. I give examples of how simple improving pelvic floor health can be. And then the last kind of section of the book is all about mastering your metabolic health, which we're hearing more and more about this. I go through a little bit of just a little blip on how did we get here? How did we get to only 6.8% of us in North America, which I feel like our countries, our states, our provinces are, we have power, we have running water, we have the ability to, cook our food, like, and how yet are 93% of us not metabolically healthy. So I bring this all together and then the book was done and I happened to be at a retreat in Costa Rica and I just got this major download like the book is not done. So there's actually a secret chapter that doesn't even show up in the table of contents all about our mana or this, mana is a Polynesian word for energy or chi. And I really feel like that was the missing piece that brought all of the pillars of mindset, movement, and metabolic health together. So that's really what it is. It's a little bit story. It's a little bit self-help. It's a little bit, soul searching. And then what I did is I created a course called the Growth Lab. And the Growth Lab essentially brings the book's pages to life in an online course where you can go through it with me. Whether it's how to breathe properly diaphragmatically or, how to do a little bit of a glute release. I share some recipes in the Growth Lab. We talk about a gift that Marcy Shimoff from the Chicken Soup for the Soul Empire gifted me in an interview, this heart resonance alignment tool. And so there's lots there to access. And the statement that I like to share is that not everything in this podcast is going to resonate. Not everything in the book is going to resonate, but the information that does, pay attention to that because that's almost like the ears of your soul saying that I want, can we live that or can we try that? Um, and then once you start living the information and sharing it, that's when it becomes wisdom and the up leveling of self is an outcome of that. So that's really what the book and the course is all about.
I love it. I love it. And you know what you said there about like some of it might resonate with you. Also, as we go through life and we have different experiences and we get different perspectives, then a different part or different parts might resonate with you at
Yes.
different times too, right? So it's
Yes.
really like a sort of a guidebook,
Yep.
guidebook for the sacred woman. So I just
Yeah.
love that. So I know you mentioned you had a little gift for the audience around your book.
Yes.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So right now we have Amazon.ca and .com. We have the Kindle version at 99 cents, and we're going to keep it there for a little bit because I would love for you to, invest the 99 cents. In Canada, it is $1.06. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
let's just be honest with the currency exchange. But with that, you get immediate access to the growth lab. So, I mean, there is the paperback if you want to flip pages, which I still love flipping pages in a book. I'm not great at, being on a screen and reading it, but that is what I would, love to let your community, your audience know, Jane, is that they can access this resource for a very low price, and then they can get, kind of the elevated experience of on their own time being able to access there's 10 plus parts or videos within the growth lab that you can consume. You can binge like a Netflix season, or you can do one, read it in the book. And so the book basically, if you're, let's say you're on chapter 3, and then at the end of chapter 3, I'll say like, head over to the growth lab and we will bring this part of the book. We'll have more of a discussion about it. So I know there's some people that have said, I love that because I read the book and then I go, it's almost like having like a little book club where they read and then they go to the growth lab. And there's others that have like, I've plowed through the book and now I'm going through the growth lab. And there's others that are like, I'm not even reading the book yet. I'm just loving, the interaction in the growth lab. So it's really like those, choose your own adventure books from when we were kids. You can you can consume the content. Basically, it meets you where you're at.
Hmm. Beautiful. So we'll have the links there for readers, readers, listeners, viewers to go find that. Jana, that's really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And always have this one last question. And that's,
Uh-huh.
what's one thing someone could do today that's going to begin to initiate healing in their body, like the tiny baby step? What would you
Yeah.
say?
So the brain does not discern between success and gratitude. It doesn't, right? And so my one thing to leave you with today is, because of that, if you're someone who feels like you've been trying everything, but yet you don't see any results, or you feel like you've been taking 2 steps forward, and then in half the time of those 2 steps forward, you've taken 10 steps back. Starting and ending your day with some gratitude, whether it's like just thinking of it in your head, verbalizing it, writing it. Your mind is the most powerful central processing unit on this planet. I don't care how elevated AI is getting or what we can do with, all this fancy technology. The one thing that technology will ever, ever, ever be able to do is actually feel the way we do. And when we look at our emotional, if you think of it like an artist, and he or she has like their paint platter, and they are painting something. You get to choose in those moments where you feel like the wobble is real and you're in the middle of this storm. You still have the beautiful power of choice. And sometimes we forget that. And gratitude can bring us like gratitude for another day on this earth, gratitude for, this is the only day. I mean, I know we're going to be watching this after the fact, but we're shooting this on October 29th. This is the only October 29th in 2024 that we get to the 1440 minutes in this day. We only get them once. And maybe 1340 of them are hard and gross and uncomfortable. But what if some of them could be beautiful,
Mhm.
and we can look outside at the blue sky, and we can see our hands moving, we can touch ourselves, we can write something beautiful to ourselves or someone else. And so that's my one thing, is gratitude is the seed that can, be planted today, that you can always be confident will turn into this beautiful
Blooming flower.
blooming better. Blooming better flower.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And there's a lot of science behind gratitude as well. But you said something really important there, and that's it's a choice, right? We always have a choice of what to think about. And we can be busy and hurried and things going on in our life, but we can choose as well. So,
Hmm.
really, so simple and profound at the same time. So,
Yeah.
Jana, this has been really, really wonderful. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing your 30 years of experience and what brought you to this sacred woman's guide to blooming better. And where is the best place for people to see what you're doing, find out more
Mhm.
about you?
Yeah. So, all of the socials, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, Jana with one N dot Danielson is where I'm at. You can connect with me there. And just because of the way I show up, even with like the pelvic floor health piece, like, please, like, I'm in my DMs a lot because the way that we show up here, Jane, you and I is a little bit unique. And so please reach out because you never know what that one question or that one comment could start to, spark in you from a healing perspective, or what's that one next step. So yes, please do reach out.
She's so reachable. All right. And we'll have all of those links there as well for people to find you, but at Jana.Danielson. Jana, thank you so much for being a guest again on Wellness by Design. Thank you for just spreading this beautiful light that you are and this message that you have out in the world. I really, really love what you do. I feel
Mm.
honored to call you a friend and just really appreciate you being here today. So thank you for being here.
Oh, Jane, thank you so much.
All right, everyone, we'll see you again soon. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and do all those things and leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. And if you got any questions, or reach out to Jana and her DMs or me on my DMs. We're very reachable. We like to be right in there with our communities. All right, and we'll see you again soon.